Peace, everyone. This is your brother, Ibn Sharif Shakur, Dr. Ibn Sharif Shakur, LPC. And today I'm going to discuss some things about grief. And I'm very transparent that I have my notes right here. And hopefully there's some good talking points in there for you guys during supervision and create more conversation surrounding grief. So let's jump right in. The first thing I'd like to say is that grief is bigger than death. It's not just about losing someone, to passing away, but, there's grief about relationships, about identity, about expectations. Grief just comes in so many different forms, and I think we must first acknowledge that grief comes in many different forms so that we don't look at it in two extremes. You can consider it like a spectrum or just different categories, different types of grief. And, we talk about the stages of grief. There's the traditional stages of grief that we are aware of, like acceptance and, and denial and things like that. But the reality is grief is not linear. It can be at any point, at any different time. Each situation is different. There are different layers to situations. I'm 40 now, but when I was about 20, 21, I lost my mom. And one of the things that I did wrong, obviously I didn't know any better, so I forgive myself, was that I suppressed it because I had learned from my environment to kind of like be strong. So there was a level of delayed grief that I had that maybe when I got around towards my 30s, that I realized that unprocessed grief, even however many years later, at that time, I was at a stage of grief that one would assume would have happened right after or soon after my mom's death. So let's see. Let's normalize grief. There's a quote that I love. Grief is to be felt, not fixed. So it's something that we move through as humans, and there's no right way to deal with it. Let's see. Oh yes, the body. Grief shows up in the body. Obviously, it's going to be different for different people. Whether it's just burnout, fatigue, anxiety, chest tightness, grief shows up in the body. So one thing we know about the body when it comes to mental health, the body is the one thing, body movement is the one thing that can have give you immediate results when it comes to grief or any mental health thing that you're going through. Doesn't mean it's gonna fix things, but that's the one thing that you can do. Like if you get into an argument or if you feel some type of way, someone might say go for a walk, because even subconsciously we know that body movement is the one thing that can give you some relief to the symptoms that you're feeling for the moment. Not the long-term solution always, but it definitely helps. Again, avoid fixing grief or that type of language when it comes to grief. Because when you feel like you have to fix something, or when clients feel like they have to fix something, the internal pressure can build. It can get deeper because it's like, I'm not feeling better yet. I'm not feeling better. Again, grief is to be felt, not fixed. The more we feel it and the more we understand what that process looks like for ourselves in terms of feeling, the better it gets over time. Scars are scars. Sometimes we look at our arms and we still see the scars, but hopefully there's some level of healing and it's not always an open wound all the time. Grief can be complicated. Sometimes you can feel like you're getting stuck, and we're clinicians, so we understand the power in therapy and, clinical support and things of that nature. But people, just because we're stuck in that moment doesn't mean we're going to stay that way. So grief can be complicated. It can get stuck. I lost a friend maybe like a couple of weeks ago. He was my first friend since 5 years old. The last 2 decades, we were not as close. The connection was there, but it went kind of quiet. So when we lost him, it was like it was layers to the grief. Not only was I grieving that we lost him, I was grieving the friendship, the loss of connection. So being able to separate those things and understand that, damn, why is this hitting me so hard? Because it can be layered. Grief can be complicated. You know, a lot of times we're grieving parts of ourselves and the innocent parts of ourselves that go way back. You know, that we remember in situations like that. And again, it's not just with death. It could be a relationship. You know, I remember when things were much easier, and this time, this nostalgia. You know, so there's different levels, and grief can be complicated again. Coping mechanisms. There's no one size fits all approach. There isn't anything. Doesn't even sound familiar to me. One size fits all with grief. Obviously, we want positive coping mechanisms, things that people enjoy, creating more moments of joy. One that sticks out to me that I love this is a grief corner. Whatever a person is grieving, finding time to be intentional about grieving. Sometimes grief can be so heavy that we carry it throughout the day, throughout the week, and we feel like we're fighting the grief instead of allowing it to exist. So if I have to spend 20 to 30 minutes a day set aside from 6 to 6:30, whatever it is, to feel, to cry, to reminisce, whatever it is, that is my time to grieve. So when I'm going throughout my day, yes, I can feel the pain, and I should, but at least I know I can lean on that 30 minutes that I know I set aside for myself to go listen to a song, to go whatever it is, to allow myself to feel. That is my grief corner. I love it. It's the car for me. And with grief, the goal isn't closure, right? Closure is a word we hear a lot. In a theoretical sense, I understand closure. I do understand that. Certain situations where there's the unknown, where certain things happen, I do understand that. In certain situations. But the goal is ultimately to learn how to live with the grief, how to understand that you can hold space for two things, right? You can grieve, you can feel, and you can also live your life at the same time, you know? Yeah, but that grief corner, I really love it. It can include pictures, candles, journals. It's like I'm choosing to feel this space right now. Lighting candles, we do that at vigils. We do that for things like that. You can do that for anything you're grieving about. Burning a candle as a symbol, sitting with yourself. I'm being intentional about holding space for this. Now there can be, we can go on for an hour just about each point here, but hopefully this sparks some conversation. Now, in terms of practical things, let's name it. When it comes to grief, let's name the emotions, because again, grief is layered. So you want to have clients identify what's actually going on here. Sadness, anger, guilt. If you're relieved, confused, feel numb, let's name these. Let's name these emotions, because the more we name them, the more manageable they will become. Like the time limited grief. That's like the grief corner, right? Like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it is. The time limited grief is like a containment tool that allows you to be intentional about it. So that plays off of the grief corner. Balance. There can be a balance about like memory work, like having a healthy connection with grief in terms of pictures, music, things like that. Trying to find that line between avoiding those things that are reminders, and spiraling at the same time. That's why I think the containment tool is important, because obviously you don't want to be trying to get yourself stuck in the mud, right? Because when depressive symptoms show up, sometimes we can put ourselves in self-deprecating cycles, it feels like. But again, containment tool. Make sure you're doing it with purpose. The unfinished letter. Again, this is deeper than death. The letter can be to yourself. It can be to a loved one that you lost. It can be to old times. You know, I can write one to the 90s, how much I love the 90s. But it doesn't even mean if it's a person that you're writing to, it doesn't even mean you have to give it to them. Expressing, you know, holding space for that. What you wish you had, what you're still holding, what you forgive or don't forgive, what you're struggling with now, things like that. And of course, again, body. Deep breathing, short walks, stretching, light movement, water on your face, because we live up here so much, especially with grief. And our bodies can just feel like they're being warped. You know, body movement, being in touch with your senses and your body can definitely offset symptoms, because not only are we dealing with the long-term issues with grief, but we also have to think about our symptoms and how they show up and how we can manage them as well. Because a lot of times managing the symptoms can be the bridge to the long-term things we learn to get better. The 2-track model, grief and restoration. Like I was saying, how we can grieve and live at the same time. Holding space for sadness, memories, and pain, but also for restoration, work, relationships, routine. Helping people understand that there has to be, when I say has to be, I mean in order for us to continue to live, has to be space for both of them. I understand it's not going to be easy, and it can be steps, you know, it's a process, but ultimately understanding that that's the formula, because as we do live and life goes on with grief, that's what happens anyway. But when we understand what that looks like, we can be more intentional and putting that into practice. Support. A lot of times when grief happens, we feel alone. We feel like we don't have any support. So I challenge people to do it the other way. Let's identify what support that you do have. Who can you laugh with? Who can you vent to? Who gives you advice? Who sits with you? Let's list those people, you know, because it can feel lonely with support. Even some of you can be in a room full of people and still feel like you feel alone at times. So just let's, focusing on what we do have in terms of support. Everyone is not going to play the same role, and everyone is not going to show up the same way. So we try to accept that. Identify triggers, whether it's birthdays, anniversaries, locations, and whatever form of grief it is. Identify those triggers so that you can have a plan for when those things come up. You know, on one end, that's why I said there's a balance. Embracing them is okay, but also understanding, what do I do when I know certain birthdays are coming up, or anniversaries, or whatever the case may be? What do I do? Do I become more intentional about holding space for them? Like what is the go-to? Different things are going to work for different people. Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's a good springboard, starting point. I hope this can spark conversation for anyone in the supervision. And I'll continue to try to provide as much support as I can. Peace.